Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June Service Committee meeting. Bob, would you please call roll?
Um, Please indicate your attendance when I call your name. Director Quick.
Present. Thank you, Bob. Now let's get started with today's meeting. First up is information item I1 is a presentation on ride safe enhancement updates by our Chief Operating Officer.
Good morning, directors. Aaron Vogel, COO Indigo. I feel like I have the echo on my tablet.
Try to help us there.
It's all of them. So brought to you in surround sound today. I present to the directors and the committee, the Ride Safe Enhancement Update. These are enhancements and are essentially our initiatives to provide our customers and our employees the safest possible experience. This is quite an experience. And so next slide, just to kind of regroup. So this is an update from our continuous conversations we've had throughout 2025 on Ride Safe and our enhancements, which these initiatives are brought and kind of lumped together, just kind of recap into 5 different key enhancement themes. So the speakers are just on the tablet, not in the room, right? I can't hear past this audio. Testing. Okay. Oh, all right. Just to regroup, our 5 key enhancement themes are lumped into 5 buckets. First is the See Something, Say Something campaign, which we've been deployed back in January, where we are trying to crowdsource additional information about our network and allowing our customers to communicate what's happening with our services in real time. And then what we've done internally is adapted our protocols so that way we could respond and receive this information 24/7, which before was just done through the call center, which was limited hours. So we've enhanced that protocol internally to adapt to additional information that's shared 24/7. The second bucket, and that's really the only update I have for the group today regarding See Something, Say Something. The second category is our proactive video surveillance, where we continue to staff the radio room and proactively monitor our surveillance cameras and look at stuff that's happening in our network versus reactively using our cameras and really trying to troubleshoot issues on the street. We've had some challenges at the beginning of this deployment with some stability with staffing. We have since been able to fill some of the positions and actually activate that. And what we're seeing, the radio room is very excited about this effort and position because they can really see a lot of activity out on the streets. What we're noticing initially, though, is that by the time we see something and try to address it, the problem usually dissipates before we actually get to it, or IMPD or someone else was already responding to an issue. We'll continue to monitor that one and provide additional updates. The third theme was the adding law enforcement to the senior leadership team. The fourth category and theme is the zero tolerance approach to passenger misconduct. And 5, taking a broad holistic approach and review and understanding laws that we could either modify or add to improve the customer and employees experience. And so just to recap, going from left to right, the left side is essentially near-term wins and focus areas. To the right is the long-term ones. Now we're midpoint through 2025, and we're kind of in the middle of these strategies. And so today, I just really want to focus on next slide, which is sorry, my screen went blank for a second there, which is introducing law enforcement to the senior leadership team. We do have some employees. I'm good now. We do have employees that have law enforcement backgrounds. However, we've never really had it on from a senior leadership perspective. And so excited to update the committee that we have since last committee recruited and brought on a senior director of security and enforcement. His name is Tony Craig. He unfortunately is not here today to introduce you formally to him. He's got over 30 years of law enforcement experience and also served in the capacity of chief of police for one of our donut counties in the past. And he's really been a breath of fresh air to bring into the operations team. He's been here for about 6 weeks and I've already seen some cultural changes, both internally on how we're responding to security issues, as well as really importantly, how the contractor is responding. Because of his law enforcement experience, he's able to take a further deeper dive and challenge to the contractor that might have said like, hey, we don't think we can do these things or these are not right. He can be like, well, when I was a law enforcement officer, this was not a problem. So he's really added some assertiveness to the contractor and us internally and providing better oversight for what our expectations are for the contractor and holding them accountable. So because of that, we have seen an increase in response time, both to incidences and how they're patrolling their service areas that they're patrolling, such as like the CTC. There's doubling enough of guards is not acceptable at this point. We've actually, for the first time, actually put law enforcement officers on the buses for more than just like an hour or two. We've actually had them for full shifts after we had some incidences that occurred with some activity in May. We were heavily campaigning officers on the bus. So that is a newer look and feel from a customer experience. And it's all on budget. It's all within the confines of our hours that were allocated with our service contract, and just really taking a fresh look at our oversight from a security perspective. The other thing too with bringing in Tony, I would say that not only is the contractor being challenged, the contractor realized they're being held accountable and have higher expectations and that they need to deliver on them, that they've actually hired a supervisor to better manage their employees. So we're not managing them because they realize we mean business. We want to get the best bang for our buck out of our contractors. We continue with his relationships within the police department industry arena. We're continuing to collaborate, but even more so given his contacts and working with the local district commanders to really troubleshoot any issues that we're finding so we can work holistically with our environment versus us working on it on our own. The other thing too is with our fare inspectors that we have that are doing education and enforcement through the Nolan contract, we are also modifying some of those fare inspectors and bringing some of them in-house. We're going to try to pilot, right now we're budgeted for 16 fare inspectors through our contractor. We are moving 4 of them in-house. It cuts out the markup and it allows us to have more flexibility on what our expectations are with them. And so one of the challenges we had with our contractor with the fare inspectors is having them do a little bit more than just inspecting, such as low-level security intervention. And so with Tony's leadership, he's challenging that and believes that we can ask for a little bit more out of the personnel from a fare inspection standpoint, and also really, do that low-level security intervention, such as like this, you need to, calm down, you're being disruptive, or you need to move out of the bus if needed, if they went and completed their one full round trip, or just answering any questions, because right now they're just focused on fare inspection. So again, this has been huge, just having that law enforcement leadership on our team. Next slide. The 4th theme, which is zero tolerance to misconduct. We have not touched on this on the previous discussions. And this one we've made some headway on. And really, this is very broad. It can mean a lot of different things. And so what we have landed on is really focusing on two key components to focus on in regards to zero tolerance and what our rider guidelines are. Just to give some background context, our rider's guide, it has like 9 pages of requirements, right? No eating, no drinking on the bus. We can't enforce and police everything. We do our best we can, but we really need to focus on what is our highest priority, what are we talking about all day long? And we landed on 2 focus areas. One is fare invasion, and the second one is violent and disruptive behavior and managing those types of things. And the violent and disruptive behavior is not acceptable, both for other passengers as well as employees. And it also provides a little bit of flexibility on the personality, because everyone's interpretation of disruptive behavior can be different. So it offers a little bit of flexibility for the employee to manage that situation as well. And so with that approach, we're focusing more on addressing those issues that might come up, and doing beyond the lookouts, which we refer to as BOLOs, where we really try to attempt to identify individuals. Now, we don't have the authority to get identification from an individual, but when someone's on the bus seven times a week, we start to learn who they are. And when we work with like the district commanders with IMPD, we can start to find out who's who organically, and we can start to identify individuals and when necessary, trespass them from our system if they're a problem, or if in worst case scenario, if there's a severe disruptive issue, we can try to apprehend that as well if needed and take that action working with IMPD. And so excited to say that, the Beyond the Lookouts has been launched, and it's accessible for all of our supervisors from their road supervisor vehicles. They can go into a tablet and see who's all trespassed and who we're looking for right now in our network. We're also looking, it was supposed to be done Monday, I haven't checked yet, but we're actually putting the Beyond the Lookouts in our break rooms, because the drivers start talking about it, even though they don't know the names of individuals that might be disruptive. There's always those 1 or 2s, but they can start talking about like, oh, I see, this person on Route 8 at this time all the time on Mondays. Another one says I see it on Thursday. And so we can try to proactively identify those and deal with those issues and that person right then and there. The other thing I mentioned is working with the district commanders. We might not be able to identify anyone, but for example, we had some of our stations vandalized, right? And we've never seen this person before. We hand it over to a district commander and we say, hey, we got a problem. This is the problem. These are the pictures we have. When they do their police roll calls in the morning, they can say, oh yeah, I've seen this person. He's doing X, Y, and Z, and we know this. And so we can hand that over. We might not be able to do much, but then the appropriate authorities can take action as needed.
Aaron,
Yeah.
maybe just talk a little bit about how we're approaching like mental health as a part of this process. I know you've been thinking about
that is a good question. It kind of is part of this actually, because sometimes there can be disruptive behavior, disruptiveness to the service with mental health concerns with individuals. And so we've brought on at the end of 2024 a social service coordinator, so they can really coordinate and be hands-on with these individuals to understand what their concerns are, what their needs are, to address that and make sure that our transit service is giving them the solution they need for mobility and not maybe being a stopgap for holding them over for other solutions that they're looking for. And then we're also doing a lot of referrals. I would say last time I looked, our referral rate is about 95% of the contacts our social service coordinator is making with individuals, where they actually refer them to different social service networks, agencies to provide additional support. So they're not just being disruptive on our buses. And sometimes it could just be, getting them to where they need to be as well. And so they're working through that for sure, because that is a part of our environment. Yep. And the last one is really just taking a more aggressive approach on the fare enforcement, fare evasion, and focusing on fare education and education with the confines and the guidelines that we have available for us for enforcement. So maybe at that point, I'll take a pause, because the next slide or two is going to go straight into fare enforcement. Any questions? Any other questions on this one?
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Next slide. Here, the second component of zero tolerance to passenger misconduct is riding our service for free. That is not acceptable. And so we continue to enforce that. We continue to educate that. There's lots of opportunities to continue to do that. We changed the look and feel of some of our education and enforcement recently from the contracted inspectors, which is like literally one or two agents essentially on the bus, to being on the platforms. And we started doing fare blitzes where it was all hands on deck at the transit center, and it targeted not just one bus or one station. It really focused on every BRT line and 4 of the bays at the transit center. We did our first one in May. It was our first pilot. It was about 10 individuals. It required almost all the fare inspectors with our contractor as well as in-house security staff. So it was a really collaborative effort. And it was done during the AM hours. Well, the ridership is lower, so that way we could work out the kinks if we had any, which we didn't, knock on wood, we didn't really have any major hiccups. Because of the collaboration, there was a large visual presence and people got the message and people were very responsive. It was no fare, no ride, bottom line. We did do a lot of education and triaging individuals that had questions on the fare products. And we spent a lot of time educating people, like, even though you have a pass, you have to validate every ride, every time, every boarding. And that was probably the biggest takeaway. The good news is the majority of people had passes, which is fantastic. There was only one person that we had to turn away. They went away to the next bus. We walked to each bus with them, and eventually they walked off the transit center property. But everyone was a paying customer. A lot of our, I'll just go down into the results here. What was really interesting and ties nicely to our fare policy proposal is 140 of the 267 inspections took on that Friday morning in May were paper passes. And if you use the BRT system, it's not intuitive with paper passes, right? It's not designed for paper products. And so by nature, there's no validation happening with those fare media holders, essentially. So it's really imperative that we move forward with our fare policy proposal and start to transition away from some of the paper pass products. Because the reality is people are paying, but the perception is not, because by nature, our design and the paper passes out there allow people to just walk on with that. But with this education and enforcement, we continue to validate that people are having passes. Let's see, I mentioned the one passenger that refused to pay out of 267. The groups of individuals that were doing the education was essentially a 4 at a bay and at a bus at a time versus the standard 2, so we could better enforce and control that. The beauty by doing this at the transit center as well is we could actually keep all the doors closed and force everyone through the front door. So if you go to a station, we do all door boarding. That's really difficult to control, right? If you have 2 inspectors, you can pretty much get one of the 2 or 3 doors and do that education and controlling. By doing it at the transit center, we can better control that and make sure that there's passes presented before boarding. There was a good amount of education on how to register for our MyKey product. So I'm starting to see an increase in registered MyKey users actually since last month for 2 reasons. One, the continued educational approach that we're taking with the inspectors through these blitzes, but also from the great work from the public affairs team on messaging the fare policy proposal and the fare capping by the use of your MyKey system more and more and more. So people are starting to ask more about it, and we're educating folks more about MyKey.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
How easy is it for someone who is unbanked to use the MyKey system?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to do it. First, all of our stations have a ticket vending machine. So you could use cash at all of those stations and get a MyKey loom, which is a paper loom. It's a MyKey product. You could register it. You can register it through our retail desk. The fare inspector will help you through it if you see them as well. And you can get it registered through our customer care system. our care call center essentially. They can walk you through that online, or over the phone and help you through that. So you have over the phone, online, through an app, and in person with the retail desk for registering it. In terms of just getting the product, you can get that at any station that we have, which is over 50 stations throughout the county, and then at the transit center as well.
If I can add, just so that's super clear, people can take cash to the Carson Transit Center or you mentioned registering, Aaron, but actually loading money onto it, they can use cash at Carson Transit Center, ticket vending machines also as ways to use cash for that.
Thanks.
The other big takeaway, thank you for that, Ed. The other big takeaway was of the MyKey users, the majority of the users were valid pass holders that were veterans and students. Again, because they had a valid pass, they did not realize that they had to validate their pass every ride, every time, before boarding essentially. And so we had to go through that education process, but again, valid passes, which is great news. So we got some educational opportunities moving forward. Next slide. This is kind of a breakdown for your reference. You can see, I just want to highlight the data on the bottom right, which is covered of course by my video monitor. The bottom right, you'll see the paper passes are the bar graphs that go furthest to the right, and that is essentially showing the majority of the users, again, were paper pass holders. With the fair policy proposal, we're looking at getting no longer using the 7-day, 10-trip, and the 31-day passes. And so that is the bulk of the passes that were validated essentially. So that's the one item I want to at least highlight on here. Next slide. So I think the Fair Blitz design has been very successful. We need to continue to campaign our veterans and student MyKey Pass users of what the expectation is, not just have a valid pass, but you actually need to validate it every single time. And then to really look at refreshing our communication that kind of ties into that about the expectation of validating every ride, every time for every boarding, and making that more intuitive. And we'll continue to look at that holistically, as well as be mindful of any changes to our fare environment over the months and the year to come. We'll continue to work towards improving the functionality of some of our fare inspection collection devices. To collect all this data, we actually used 3 different devices. It was very clunky. So there is some opportunities for improvement there. And I think our approach on education was very positive the last month, because we really focused more on education of the need of validating every time, registering for MyKey versus just saying, you know, do you have a pass or not? If not, you need to get one. We want to continue to move forward with these blitzes in partnership with our contractor, but eventually have our contractor of security man these independently on their own, and then look at campaigning these blitzes and more strategically at special events like last night after the Pacers game would have been a great one. We might try to get one here in the next week at our big stations, looking at the end of the line, school locations, again, because the school MyKey users not tapping all the time. That's a great way to campaign and hit some big numbers. And then focusing on the transit center and the PM, which is the second blitz we did one on Tuesday. It was just too close to this meeting to get that data. So I have some preliminary results, but it was done during the PM hours. We got almost 400 inspections, no major hurdles or issues during crush hour. So that was really positive. And so we're going to continue to do this. I think it was a big success and a big win for us in terms of better managing zero tolerance to passenger misconduct, because riding for free is not acceptable. That is really kind of the big updates for today's discussion, really just the introduction of law enforcement to the senior leadership team, and wanted to give an update on where we're at with the zero tolerance approach, really just focusing on those 2 kind of key topics, which is the fare evasion and then tackling and addressing violent and disruptive behavior. So I think next slide, that concludes my presentation. Yes, so happy to answer any additional questions.
Any questions for Aaron?
Aaron, where did the blitz take place on Tuesday?
Transit Center as well, because we can get the biggest numbers and it's going purple line and red line. The nice thing with the Transit Center is the purple line ends there. So there's automatic layover time for the bus and the drivers and the passengers. Versus like the red line, it stops and go. The Transit Center is in the middle of the line. So we don't have a whole lot of time. It's go, 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 go. The purple line, we're not inconvenienced or slowing anything down. So that was kind of why we did that. And we also have more resources there. And it's more visible for sure. So even the folks not using BRT can see there's a lot of activity going on.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you for this. A lot has happened, I think since maybe the last update that you gave on this, and it's appreciated. The work and the effort that you all are putting in is appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate the acknowledgement.
So thanks for those comments, Stephanie. Thanks for your presentation,
Thank you.
Aaron. Next up is information item I2 is an update on our paratransit operations contractor transition presented by our Deputy Chief Transportation Officer.
Hi, good morning, directors. Mike Roth, Deputy Chief Transportation Officer here at Indigo. I'd like to take you on a little journey of enhanced customer service since MV took over the contract on March 1st. Next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight two key improvements. One, of course, is on-time performance, and the other are our care center metrics, which both are customer interfacing. Next slide, please. All right, so this could be a football field, this could be a basketball field, go Pacers. I wanted to show since January of 2025, on-time performance has continuously, well, starting March, continuously improved. For May, we're at 94.02% on-time performance, which that means all of the riders for that month were picked up within their 30-minute window. 94% is our goal, so MV has met percentage goal of 94.02%. So either a touchdown or a three-pointer, go MV, right? 3 points is the highest you can get in basketball, right? Okay, good. Just checking.
There's 4-point plays, Mike.
So they're doing really well. We're working collaboratively with MV. It's been a smooth transition so that I think our customers, well, I know our customers are seeing an improvement. We see that by some of our customer service statistics. Also, I reach out every once in a while and do some random calls to customers and ask them how their trips and journey has been, and which have been positive. A few things we have to work on, and we understand that. We're working from past, so this is a new day, and MV is bringing it home. Next slide, please. All right, this is our Care Center Call Metrics Report Card. This is completed daily, and it's completed by my quality assurance team. These are industry standard metrics that we use for performance guarantees and in really grading our contractor MV. So the first column, which is the average call duration, there's a target level of 3 to 5 minutes. If you see green and most of that column is green, that means great job. The next column is called abandonment rate, and that target is less than 5% with a minimum requirement of 8%. Again, a lot of green. So great job. Care Center, which again, our Care Center is our one-stop shop for our customers for both paratransit and our fixed route services that include BRT. The next column, average call waiting, the target level is less than 1 minute. Again, a lot of green. So they are doing a great job in those first three categories. The next category, service level. There is an opportunity to improve, as you see a lot of red, and yellow is just letting us know that there's some improvement that needs to take place. So what this column does and what it should do for MV is show them and help them realign where they need to have the most staff at the times during the day so that they can meet this goal. So this is all about target level of 85% of calls answered within less than or equal to 20 seconds. And the minimum requirement is 80% in less than 20 seconds. So there again is a lot of improvement here. And we are working on redefining the staffing levels and ensuring that we are doing our diligence in improving the service level calls. One thing that I wanted to point out is that our paratransit calls historically take longer to finish than our fixed route ETA information. So we're looking again at the paratransit calls. I can break down the times in our software TalkDesk, how many calls were taken for paratransit and fixed route, and then look accordingly at the times. And if we have to make some adjustments to staffing, that would be the time that we would make those adjustments. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Then the last column, SolarWinds transcribing errors. SolarWinds is our portal that we use for customer comments. And the care center, actually, the agents do transcribe the comments that they receive from customers. So the target level is 90% with a minimum requirement of 75%. If you see 100, and that's green, of course, that means there were no transcribing errors for that day by a care center agent. If you see yellow and red, which there are a few, only 4, that means there were some transcribing errors. And what my team, the quality assurance team, will do, kick back the errors to the care center agents, have them correct those, and then return them back to us. So it's either it's simple as maybe just missing a phone number or missing the location. So we do look to make sure that the errors are transcribed so that when we do our investigations, we have all the information that we need to paint that story, and it just helps the QA agents. All right, next page, please.
Mike, I like all
Yes.
the green on there, but I really want to see a little bit more in that service level area. So the action plans that you'll be putting together with MV
Yes.
in that area, we'll be paying attention to those. So
Yes, sir. Understood and duly noted. And then the last slide for this presentation is a staffing report. And as I'm not going to go through each line, but as you can see that MV is almost staffed in all these main areas, which again, this is a great thing for us. We've not seen this staffing in the past. So MV has done a really good job with recruitment. They're doing a great job with retention. And again, this is showing in our numbers. So go ahead.
I was just going to ask, did we dip in our operators from the last time we got an update? Thought we were closer to that goal.
No, I think I think we've improved. I'd have to
Okay.
go back and look because MV has 65 operators on their own. Then they use Peoples, which
Oh.
is 12, and Silver Ride, which is 12.
So that's not added to your total?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So the goal though is 75 total.
Yeah.
So add 65, 12, and 12. and
Gotcha.
without doing the math, I don't
Gotcha.
know. 7 inches, I don't know. All right. So that ends this presentation, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or further questions.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions? Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Next up is information item I3, which is an update on our Beyond the ADA utilization by our Deputy Chief Transportation Officer.
Yeah. Good morning again, directors. Mike Roth, Deputy Chief Transportation Officer here at Indigo. So I wanted to bring forth some data on our Beyond the ADA service utilization. In the presentation, I've broken out 2024 and about the first quarter of 2025 in separate slides. So next slide, please. All right, so when looking at this data, service area, customer copay, number of trips, riders in zones. So the service area for ADA to ADA, that means trips that were taken by the customers traveling within the ADA and staying in the ADA area. it's an 80%. So basically 80% of our riders take trips within the ADA. Moving on down, ADA to beyond the ADA. So if I live in the ADA and take a trip beyond, outside of the mandated 3/4 of a mile, that's 8.5%. Or you can see again how many trips. And then of course the copay that for that specific zone. Next is beyond the ADA to the ADA. So I live outside, I travel in. That's a 9.1%. Beyond the ADA to beyond the ADA, so I live outside that mandated area, 0.9%. And same day in the beyond the ADA for 2024, there were 0 trips. The Indigo, I'm sorry, I skipped, didn't I? Let me go back. Beyond the ADA to beyond the ADA was 1.4%. Indigo sponsored assessment and eligibility is 0.9%. And then same day in the beyond the ADA is 0%. I apologize for that error.
Mike, remind me what riders in zones, what does that mean?
So if you recall, we have 2 service areas. We have the mandated ADA, and then we have the beyond the ADA, or the beyond the non-ADA, which is that service area outside of our mandated ADA area. So ADA to ADA in the mandated area. Then of course, beyond the ADA, so you got trips coming from ADA going to the beyond, and beyond the ADA coming into the service area, the main service area. And then you have same day trips in that beyond the area.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any questions?
Is this our second year with the,
We did this start in 2023, right?
or 20?
Yeah. January 1st, 2023.
It'd be interesting to kind of see what that data looks like over time if you have it. Maybe you already got it in here.
Yeah, when we first started, we actually did break it out, and I wanted to say that 11% approximately were on the outside, lived within the outside of the beyond the ADA area, and then the remainder was inside. So the numbers are pretty consistent so far. Next slide, please. So this is the same data, just a different way of looking at it. All the colors look pretty. Again, just a different way to look at it. All right, next slide, please. Same breakdown for first quarter of 2025. The percentages, I'm not going to go really through this, but the percentages, as you can see, are very close to 2024 so far. So we're not seeing a huge difference in any of the zones to date. And then next slide, please. Same, I just did another visual chart for you all. And that is the end of my presentation, and I am more than happy to answer questions or provide any additional data for you.
Thanks, Mike. Don't know that I have any additional questions at this point.
All right. Thank you, directors.
The update. Next up is information item I4 is our customer perception survey 2024 to 2025 presented by our manager of special projects and regional mobility integration. Love all these titles.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, directors. Ryan Wilhite, I'm the manager of special projects and regional mobility integration. I'm here today to talk about our 2024 customer perception survey. I have a presentation. Okay. I want to make a note on this presentation. So this customer perception survey is an effort that is in coordination with our IU Indianapolis School of Public Environmental Affairs Peterson Fellows. And so they put together, they work on this presentation and this project. The project itself, the report is actually in a PowerPoint format. And so what I've done for this presentation is I've pulled out some highlights to talk today to this committee, but the entire report is actually also in the packet. So that's why it looks really, really long. I won't actually be covering all those slides. So everybody can stop being concerned about that. It is available, however, when you have questions, you want to see some slide, we can pull those up and we can talk about that. So we go ahead, Tamika, thank you. Okay, great. So as I mentioned before, this is the presentation on the 2024 Customer Perception Survey. Quick note before we advance the slide, this is our second year doing the survey. We started in 2023. As I mentioned, this has been an endeavor in which I have Peterson Fellows assist in the setup of the project, the execution of the project, and the analysis. So there's a lot of work that goes into this by those Peterson Fellows. It's a great project for them. I will note, just like you might in any kind of a report like this, errors are mine as their supervisor. So if there are any errors, that's something that we clean up and go forward. I will say it is a really good effort and is now across 2 or 3 school years with the Peterson Fellows. And we are going to conduct our 25 one at the end of this year. And we're also conducting a customer satisfaction survey. Not to be too confusing, we'll explain that when that comes along as well. So a lot of good effort there. I did want to mention Aspen, Josh, and Ainsley worked really hard on this. So thank you to them, even though they're probably not watching, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and go forward there. So the purpose of the customer perception survey, I apologize, this is very small. This is on a PDF. If there's any way to blow that up, I would appreciate it because even with my eyesight, having a hard time on that. The first is to understand the customer perception. Previously, to understand that, we looked at customer complaints and other touch points with our customers. This is a good way to try and ask customers questions when they're not necessarily as upset about an acute problem. This is just getting us a chance to say, how do you perceive the service and other different characteristics of Indigo? And those questions are curated with Indigo staff. We do, of course, as with any survey, try to maintain questions from one survey to the next, so that way we could do year-over-year comparisons. But that is a primary purpose of this. As I mentioned, this is another touch point with our customers. We have other ways in which our customers can talk with us about problems or successes, and that's our customer care center through the not only the Carson Transit Center, but also the phone number. This also provides us an opportunity, if we wish, to have focus groups. We haven't done that quite yet. We do ask customers if they'd like to participate in a focus group. And then if they do, then we can always bring them in and ask them specific targeted questions, maybe about responses or about some discrete project that we're looking at implementing. And then lastly, continuous improvement. So if we implement a program or project, we can use customer service data at some point in the future to be able to see if it's making a difference in the responses that they are giving us. Go ahead and advance that, please. Thank you. There are 6 areas within the customer perception survey. I will admit, as has been told to me many times, it is a long survey. That is why the PowerPoint is so long. There are 33 questions, and there are several multi-part questions. So it is quite long. That is something that we look at every single time to try and see, can we reduce this? How do we make it a little bit faster? We have an incentive for this program. Everybody who participates completes a complete survey, gets a MyKey card with $4 of fare transit value. There's a lot of benefit in doing it that way, where getting MyKey into people's hands. And then when we do our in-person portion, which the customer perception survey is entirely in portion, we can actually help them understand how to use the MyKey card, which is something sometimes we run across as well. So 6 areas: information, keys to ridership, overall satisfaction and priority, safety and security, customer care and comfort, and then a section about you. The first one is maybe feels like a bit of a misnomer. This is how you get information about Indigo. Let's go ahead and move forward. Like I said, this is going to be highlights, so you're not going to get everything here. We did include a slide on overall perceptions of the customer perception survey in 2024 from Indigo staff perspective. The number of engagements was higher than 2023, which is positive. The Microsoft form that we used was also reported as pretty easy by our surveyors that we hire, so that's also quite good. We used to deploy a kiosk. That became a bit of a headache, candidly. Everybody told me it was kind of a dumb idea and that it would be stolen. That was not the case. However, our power cord was stolen. So we decided that based on the headache that it caused and the low number of responses we were receiving, we weren't actually going to deploy kiosks anymore. And so we've removed that part of the survey. And then finally, we deploy in-person surveyors. We hire independent contractors. These are typically taken in from our transit ambassadors. They're pretty familiar with our service and they're pretty comfortable with talking to people. And so that's a great pool of people to pull from. We also use temporary staff that did not work quite well. And so our takeaway from this as well was to essentially continue to move forward using transit ambassadors as much as possible. Also, feel free to stop me whenever you want. I will talk a little quickly. We will have a question period at the end, but feel free to stop me at any point. Go ahead and advance. What'd you say?
Quiz.
No, no quizzes, please. Thank you. So one of the demographic questions here. So one of the things, and pardon me because it is cut and pasted a little bit. So my normal process of looking at this is a little different. One of the things that we do when we look at this survey is to understand some differences in who's responding. We deploy this survey in two ways. I mentioned the in-person, that's the primary method in which I like to deploy it, but we also make it available on our website. So there's an online responder and a person who's responding in person. One of the things that we noticed in looking at those two different groups is that there are some drastic differences in those individuals who respond and those characteristics. This chart, which is a little difficult for me to read, my apologies on this. So what you can see here is blue is iPad. That's the in-person and red is online. And this is how often do you ride the bus. This is a pretty key thing that we like to understand for the people that are responding. As you can see, the online respondents skewed heavily to very rarely or sometimes far less than the iPad respondents who were almost 70% into the very often category. So this is something that we have to think about when we're looking at, if we deploy it just online, we may get a lot of people who are not riding as often. That may make us think differently about how we analyze the data. So maybe we should be looking at we should be thinking about some of these questions and the responses slightly differently than if it was just everybody who said they rode very often. So this is a way in which we can, their characteristics and demographics are ways in which we can try and understand the responses a bit better and think about it a little differently. Let's go ahead and.
One question for you. When you're in person and you're using the iPads, are you just handing them the iPad for them to complete it, or is someone talking them through the survey?
It depends. It's a great question, Director Quick. It depends on the surveyor and the individual. Sometimes they will hand the iPad over, and sometimes they will actually administer the survey. In particular, if they encounter someone who cannot read, that is something that will happen, or if the surveyor just feels more comfortable doing it that way. Like I said, it is a long survey, so for people who can read a little quicker, it tends to go a little faster.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned before, we had more responses this time than in 23. In 23, once again, red is online, blue is in person or iPad. You can see that we had more in person than online, and we had a total of about 300 responses more this year. Sorry, in 24, excuse me, than we had in 23. Part of that is something that you don't see, and I didn't really provide a lot of background here for that, but I'll talk to you here, which is we had more surveyors. So in 23, it was a pilot. We didn't know how it would work. We hired one surveyor. We had her do different shifts, and we figured out that it would work pretty well. And so this, in 24, we had, I forget the number. I want to say it ended up being 5 surveyors that covered from Sunday through Saturday of an entire week. And they were covering 16 hours in every day. So we had 2 in the morning and I think 2 or 3 in the afternoon, everyday coverage. So we had a lot more responses in person because of that, which I think was what we want to get out of those contracts. Go ahead and move forward. One of the key items and that I've pulled out here is the recommendation question. So would you recommend us to a friend or a colleague? The Net Promoter Score, I'll be candid to say that I wasn't as familiar with this, not doing a lot of survey work previously, but this is apparently a pretty key metric for these customer-facing ones. As you can see, we dipped just a little bit, but it was generally about the same from 23 to 24. Our Net Promoter Score was positive. It was 25 in 23, and it was 24 in 2024. Next slide, please. One of the things that we ask is how do you get information, or how easy it is to get information from the various ways that we provide that to customers. Most people said it was pretty easy to get information. One thing that you can take away from this is that we had far more people not know what the Writer's Guide was. So that's an opportunity for us to either advertise that a little bit more, understand that that's maybe not the place to put as much key information, or if it is, we just know that they may get it from other places like the CTC or a bus or the website. Go ahead and advance. Another place is when you are looking for information about Indigo, what Indigo resource do you use? And so writers are heavily relying on official Indigo channels. That also includes the Indigo Driver, the MyStop app. Transit app is not official, although we do have our feed in there, and then the service desk as well. So things that aren't as valuable to people getting information was the Indy Star and the Twitter and Facebook page as well. Go ahead and advance that. We do ask a question. These are our 7 keys to ridership. This carries through from some of the early Marion County Transit Plan work that was done about a decade ago. So 7 keys to ridership. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what you'll see is the blue and orange are strongly agree that we are fulfilling the needs that are outlined as keys to ridership and generating ridership. And so that's quite positive. There are a couple of these where we're getting a little bit more neutral, so something to keep an eye on. The freedom to change, reliability, and good use of time did have a higher percentage of neutral or disagree. This is something that we just track. It's not as critical as an individual metric, but it is something that we'd like to track over time and continue doing that. Can you advance, please? This is a question that's pretty straightforward. Which of the following improvements would encourage you to ride Indigo more frequently? And so they can select all that apply. So even though there's a percentage on the left-hand side, this does not add up to 100%. This is one that I continue to highlight because every year it's about the same. Frequency is the most important factor to Indigo customers. 26% of the respondents included both weekend and weekday frequency as being very important to them, and 48% of responses included one or both of the frequency answers. So this is very important to our customers. As you can tell, it's the highest on the chart. If we stack the frequency together, it's even higher, right? It's a lot of these responses. Some of the ones that are a little lower is if I felt safer riding on the bus and if fares were lower. So to them, and what we can take away from this, right, is that frequency is really important for our customers in riding the bus and taking the bus more often. What makes it difficult to access Indigo? So another question, trying to understand, what may be a barrier to our customers. Two of the top ones, distance from stop and once again in frequency. So frequency rears its head again, but also distance from stop. We know that is a bit of a challenge. And so some of the things that we try and do in areas where we do expect to be slightly longer walks is really working with DPW or with our rapid transit projects, having better pathways for people. So that walk is a little bit better. We also have our paratransit service for individuals who are not able to access the bus for eligible reasons. Go ahead, advance, please. We ask an open-ended question of what initiatives have made it easier and harder to ride the bus. I'll be honest to say that we've debated how to ask this question. Do we mention specific initiatives. For instance, the safety initiative we just talked about. Could we mention that? Or do we leave it open-ended? We leave it open-ended, so it's kind of interesting to hear from the customers what they think. As you can see, a lot of familiar items here. So Redline, the bus drivers, Mikey card. I'm not going to read them all off. And then harder frequency once again, curb sidewalk conditions, the weekend routes and hours, and then paying with the phone and digital Mikey is also on here as well. These aren't necessarily in order of importance. With these types of questions, it's a little harder to get to that without doing a lot of manual labor on that, which is something that we'll continue to look at. So we asked a new question this year, and I have to look at it because it's not on this slide. My apologies. Let's see. In the past year, has Indigo service improved, stayed about the same, or gotten worse? These are the kind of questions that internally sometimes we worry about the answer. And so respondents believe that Indigo's service has improved in the last year. That's 48% of respondents. Or it stayed about the same, which is 40%. We have 12% who said that it's gotten worse. So that's a pretty positive response from our customers directly telling us. Now, what we haven't done is to dig into this. We could cross tab to see what people who are frequent riders, are they saying this, things like that nature. I will slow down a little bit to say if there are, and feel free to ask at the end of presentation, but if you do have a question like that, feel free to ask. We do this analysis, and so we can also further dive into the data or provide you with a different look at it if you'd like. One other thing that I will mention here, which is a shortcoming on my part, is that I did not do a good job doing year-over-year comparisons. That was brought up by Aaron in looking at safety and security. That's an apology on my part. This is only our first year having actual trend data, if you will. So that was something that I did not think of and have our fellows do, but that is something that we'll be making sure to add in and having that available. Let's go ahead and advance. We ask questions about safety and security. That's a big one for us. We will break it down, as you see in the report, by gender as well. That's something that other transit agencies have done, which is can be quite telling. What you'll see here is that 70% of the respondents reported no experience of harassment. This is a select all that applies, so it doesn't add up to 100%. So you may see people that are select racial, ethnic, or others, so they could select all of those if they wanted to. Verbal threats were the next highest selection. 86% of the respondents included only one response. So 86% of the respondents said that they were, of the people that were, sorry, I think that includes not as well. So 86% of responses only included one choice. So that means that you're not having a large number of our respondents saying we're experiencing multiple forms of harassment on the bus. I'll go ahead and advance the slide, please. And then, have you seen harassment? So we have two questions. I have experienced harassment. That's the previous one. And then I have seen others experience harassment. As you can see here, once again, not was 53%. So that's the majority. Of course, this is select all that applies. So I'm going to try to get that out of my brain too. And of those who saw harassment, verbal threats was the highest percentage, with physical threats next highest. And once again, 75% of the responses only had the one response. So not a lot of people are experiencing or have seen, multiple forms of harassment. I would say overall, because I don't believe I included it in this highlight, people told us that our respondents told us that they felt safe on every trip or almost every trip at a pretty high clip. So these responses are actually not all that surprising given what they've told us about how they feel safe on the bus, which is quite positive. Going back into the About You section, so ridership frequency, most respondents ride the bus daily, with an additional 19% using it at least 3 times per week. This is great. We're hearing directly from the people who are riding our service pretty frequently. And these are people that we would like to get them to not only ride more, but tell their friends to ride more, right? So word of mouth is pretty important for us as well. And only a small percentage ride rarely or very rarely. So I think, this is one of these slides where we could talk a little bit about that difference between online and in person. And we could dive into this type of question a little bit more or other questions to see the differences between those that are riding infrequently in their perception of the service and those who ride frequently in their perception. So those are things that we do think about when we're putting together the analysis of the survey. Next slide, please. How do they use the bus? So work commutes dominate ridership, at least for our respondents in this survey. That was 47%. Leisure, social, and education are the next two, and then medical and shopping are much lower. Next slide, please. We ask a question, why do you use Indigo? Answers include, I don't have a car. I could use a car, but I choose to use public transit. I choose not to own a car, or I am unable to drive. A majority of riders use Indigo because they don't have a car available. A smaller portion could use a car, but prefer public transit. And then there is a group that are suggesting that they're unable to drive. This is a group that obviously would have to look for other options, but in this case, the respondents have chosen Indigo for their transportation means. So once again, that I don't have a car available and I am unable to drive. These are populations we could dive into their responses a little bit more as well and see how they feel about the service. Next, please. We ask a question. I believe this is new. What would convince you to move from paying in cash to using MyKey? This is a ranked question. So this pie chart is actually for those that responses that were ranked first. So this is their first choice response. Obviously, they ranked them. So some people, had these responses as second or third or fourth. I can also provide that information. But as you can see, I can no longer pay with cash on the bus was 40%. I get a discount. And if I pay with cash, it's more expensive. Kind of the same concept, but just wording a little differently, seeing how that goes. Right around the same at around 38% if you combine them together. And then if paying with MyKey is easier and faster, that's only 23%. So this is one of the reasons why the perception survey is a good tool for us is that we can ask questions like this. So if there's a question that we're interested in throwing in, we have that opportunity to get that in there and to kind of take the temperature for those customers. Next slide, please. Okay, perfect. And that's the end. So that's just the start to the actual full report presentation. I'm more than happy to take questions at this time. Yeah.
Ryan, I would like to see some of those crosstabs that you mentioned and highlighted. It would be good to kind of dive into that data a bit more. And to maybe Aaron's point, seeing some of that over time, I think would be helpful as well. Can you just talk a little bit, because this is a lot of great information, but just how are we acting on this? How are we using this data to kind of drive us forward? I heard you talk a little bit about it here in pieces, but I'm just trying to understand kind of what's our philosophy after we get a report like that.
Yeah, Director Gardner, it's a great question. 23 was our pilot year. So, there was a lot of trying to figure out what the instrument looks like and how do we deploy it, administer it, and how do we take that in. And then when we presented the results to the internal team, it was a lot of, well, what's next? And I think at that time, it's so new that it's difficult to understand how to necessarily either build that into programs or projects or to act on it immediately. 24 is the second year, so we got a little bit more under our feet. And so once again, I think our team is receiving these responses. We debrief with the team who helps set this up, so to speak. Okay, so there's a team of, I think I've told you this, Director Gardner and Director Quick, that usually when you see me, there's a team of Indigo staff behind me, right? So my presentation is a representation of a lot of work and not just myself. And so that group that does that helps set this up: procurement, operations, public affairs, security, safety, I believe, as well. They also get the presentation, and I upload it as well. I think that ideally, right, we're able to, when we have a program or project deployed, we can start to see this reflected in the responses year over year. So we could say, well, we did this project in beginning of 25. Let's see how the responses in this category on the customer perception survey, if they change dramatically. It's possible the program may not affect those specific respondents, so it may not be reflected in there. But that's one way that we can do that. Focus groups, like I said, is another way. How we're actually doing it right now, I think, is from my perspective, is just making this as useful to our staff and board as possible at this point, and then making sure that I'm getting it out as much as I can as well. There's a lot of stuff, as you know, as a director, that we produce. And so there's a lot for our staff to look at, and it's easy to when you're not looking at your day-to-day work to not necessarily overlook, but forget, and so part of my job, right, and our job is to make this available and to reiterate and say, we're going to continue to do this until we find no value in it, right? I mean, that's always the work that I do, believe in, is, unless it's federal compliance, that we continue to do it as long as we find value in it.
No, I appreciate that. And I'd just say for future action items, as as we learn that some of this data is helping us to drive decisions, just making sure that we're highlighting that as we're bringing forward, because it just helps us, I think, as directors, connect those dots. But thanks for your presentation. Any other questions for Brian? Your presentation is received.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. And our final, but not to be mistaken for less important, but our final agenda item is information item I-5, our Mobility Advisory Committee update presented by our MAC Chair, Mr. Chris Hollingsworth.
Good morning, directors. I am Chris Hollingsworth, Chairman of the Mobility Advisory Committee. And we met on May 14th. And some of the things that we worked on May 14th, we had some questions about some of the taxi vouchers. There was problems with the dates. Some of them were dated, the expiration dates were dated too short. So we spoke about that, and we were told that they would be honored until the correct date, and we simply asked that Indigo communicate with all the cab companies and make sure all the drivers understood that, and that they would comply to the proper date, even though the voucher was dated wrong. And there has been an issue with vouchers being issued and not available to be used until several days after the date that they were made valid. So we spoke about that, and it's our understanding that the way the process works is that they accept applications and requests for vouchers between the 10th and 20th, and then they award those vouchers 3 to 5 days after that closes, so anywhere from the 23rd to the 25th. And when they award them, they date them as to their expiration date. And then sometimes due to mail or whatever other reasons, people are not getting these until 5 to 7 days afterwards. So we are proposing that that either the dates on those vouchers become valid 5 to 7 days after the date they're awarded, or that the length of time that they're valid be extended to allow for time for those vouchers to get into the hands of those that want to use them. So we also talked about we've talked for several months about having our own email address. There is an email address on the website for the MAC, but it's an email address that we typically don't have access to. And I don't know if it's not used, but we typically don't get a lot of information from that email address. So we asked if we could have our own email address. We were informed that we could not use the Indigo name, which is perfectly fine. So we have finally decided on email address and instituted that, and we're in the process of publicizing it. It is indytransit@gmail.com. And we hope to be getting a lot of input directly from the consumers on that so that we can better serve as an advisory committee and better address issues that the consumers are having. So our last main item is, in an effort to better connect with our consumers, we had talked about having a town hall to, in the summer, to discuss the performance of MV during their first 90 days and how they handled the paratransit. So we began making plans for that, and that will occur on June 26th at 6 p.m. At 130 South Pennsylvania Street at the Hyatt House. Goodwill has been kind enough to help us procure a room for that, and it will be in person and virtual. We do recognize that after we had made those plans that Indigo proposed fare increases. So we are aware that that will be a large topic of discussion during that meeting as well. And we hope to be able to take some of those comments and present them to the board. And we would also invite the CEO and Mr. Roth and any of the board members to attend that would like to attend that as well. So, and that's really what we've been working on the most. I think our biggest priority is that, well, we have been reviewing the bylaws. Last year in June, we submitted updated bylaws for approval. And on May 14th, of this year, we received a set of bylaws that are a counter proposal, and we're in the process of reviewing those. We hope to have that process completed by our next meeting so that we can either accept or make a counter proposal. So those are kind of the things that we are working on. Like I said, our main focus is that we feel that in order to be better as an advisory committee, we need more contact with the consumers. So we are making a distinct push with consumer organizations and organizations that actually work with the consumers, whether that be BOSMA or Goodwill or Noble Centers, to reach out to them and have more direct contact with them. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris, and appreciate the work that the MAC committee's doing to better connect with those providers. I did want to make sure that staff had an opportunity to maybe respond or clarify to the voucher issue if there was a.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Roth, Deputy Chief Transportation Officer for Indigo. So just I wanted to clarify just a few of the comments regarding the vouchers. In Hawville, where our 2425 West Michigan is stationed, which is our main fulfillment center, if you will, there had been some adjustments in the mail carrier in Hawville that had created some delays in mail. So yes, we are aware of that, and that has gotten a lot better. A part of what that created for us is that we've also made the option available that customers can come pick up the vouchers if they're available to. At any time, somebody needs extra time on their vouchers, or if they've received late vouchers, they typically call in and say, hey, I didn't get these vouchers until this time, et cetera. And we'll look at that on a case by case basis. In addition, the vouchers I think that Chris were talking about are the lottery vouchers, which yes, there are a specific time frame that the lottery vouchers are ordered, processed, and sent out. The emergency green vouchers, that's open every day so that a customer can call in and say, I need to place an order for the green vouchers. Then the team assembles the vouchers, puts them in the envelope, and either we send them out via mail or the customer will elect to come pick those up. In addition to the request to extend the vouchers, the lottery vouchers were already at 65 days. What we did with the green vouchers is we moved those to 65 days as well. So some of the items have been addressed, some of which, the mail system, unfortunately, there is a slight delay. But again, we're very open to anyone calling in and, asking questions, and we can make arrangements otherwise to assist.
Mike, my assumption is that the 5 days and the 65 is to account for the mail delivery time. Was that? the
It's
thought
to help
behind
with that, yes. Typically, the vouchers are either good for, and typically they've been 60 days. So yes, we did add that 5 days to hopefully help with the slowdown of the mail. I mean, I know I get mail that's not always on time through the post office, but we've tried to, hopefully that additional 5 days on the green vouchers will assist with that.
Director Gardner. But you don't announce it.
You want to come to the mic, Greg?
That's fine.
Okay, it's like 1 o'clock.
Close enough. Everybody can hear me anyway. I'm pretty loud. No, my name's Greg Meyer. I'm Vice Chair of the MAC. I've been around the MAC since '08. Dealing with these white lottery vouchers. They were 30 days in the past. We got them changed to 65 days. The way it used to run up until April of this year. For instance, I buy them in April. They are stamped 30 days for May, 30 days for June, and 5 days for July. So if I get them in April, the vouchers I receive will say July 5th. That gives plenty of time for the mail and everything else. But for some reason in April, they changed. I know this for a fact because I use them, I get them all the time. I got them in April. They were stamped June 24th. I call and says, what's up? They don't know. Took me 3 days to get a response. And then I was told, if you don't use them by the 24th, yes, you can wait until July. You can use them up until July 5th. So the ones I received for May, I got them. I received them on May 30th. Also, there was a follow-up email from Tamika Weathers from MV on this issue. And we were told in the follow-up, and I can forward that follow-up to you, Director Gardner, if you'd like, and Director Quick. It stated the lottery vouchers start on the 20th of each month. So what I did, on May, since I called in on May, ordered them earlier May, I called on the 20th and said, can I pick up my white vouchers today? No, Mr. Meyer. Customer service told me this. The dates are the 10th to the 20th, and then we process them. So there's a lot of miscommunication going on here, but the old way used to work. Give it 30 days for 1 month, 30 days for another month, and 5 days. And that takes care of the mail. So I don't understand it. And I don't understand why all of a sudden we started to go 65 days in April of this year. So, I mean, and I did try follow up with Ms. Weathers calling the number that was on the email, which is I believe, a Texas number, and I never got a call back. So these vouchers we appreciate them, very grateful for them, because I'm sorry to say, but the paratransit, we cannot rely on medical appointments. So the vouchers, that's where I use them. And I see, unfortunately, a lot of specialists down at IU and so forth. So they're vital. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg.
Thank you, Greg. This is Aaron Bogle, COO Indigo. If I could just maybe make a comment on that. It sounds like there's been a transition in either the process or the people with the contractor change, because that's really the only thing that took place around the same time in the spring. So I think we either need to do a better job communicating the change or make sure the staff are all on the same page and we're communicating it consistently and processing things the way you're used to, if that's the correct process. So I'm going to take this offline with the staff and the contractor as well, just to make sure we're all on the same page, and we can update you guys at the next MAC committee and make sure we're all in agreement on the white voucher process.
Yeah, because
If you
I
don't
mean,
mind.
the ones that, for instance, I received on the 30th, by the time you receive them, I can't start using them until the 31st. And they started ticking, the clock started ticking on the 20th. So that means 11 days have passed before I can start to use them. So really, I have, 54 days to use them.
Got it.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you highlighting this as an issue. And as Aaron said, we will make sure that we are clarifying that process, communicating that out to you guys. So we'll take that as an action item from this meeting.
Definitely appreciate it and thank you.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Chris, for your presentation for the MAC. That actually concludes our agenda. Our meeting is now adjourned. Our next meeting will be held on Thursday, August 14th at 8:30 a.m. here in our East Campus Boardroom. As always, recordings of our meetings are available on Channel 16 and our website at indigo.net. Thanks everyone for attending in person and watching online.